Persons requesting notification.
Okay, thank you. And so a couple changes. We have lost Taylor Scarden as he moved out of his district, and therefore, I guess I resign or whatever. He had to move on. So that seat is now. We're gonna miss Taylor. He was great. I thought he was a great addition to the board.
And that's the rural south seat.
Rural South, yeah. Hopefully he'll find his way back here one day. Like Teresa Heitstrom is now done. Who was once serving this board and is now back. Teresa, you want to give us a little 30-second bio?
I'm the founder of West Ashley Connects. Prior, it was West Ashley United. After I left, we revamped it to be more conservative conservation. We're doing a lot more projects in West Ashley. They're bringing the ownership back to what is a hodgepodge city and county. Working with individual neighborhoods, forming associations, replacing some. So I'm glad for that.
Could y'all make sure the microphones are on, especially when you're speaking? And if we can't hear it through the microphone, then you can't hear it on YouTube.
And so just a comment on that too. We follow what's called Robert's rules here, and it's important that whoever's leading the meeting, whether it's Charlie on the subcommittee or myself and Gab or someone else, that we call on people so that that person isn't recognized if it's reflected in the notes correctly. I think it was very hard for the note takers to capture the comments if the name is not said and there's not order in that process. So we're going to try to stick to that. Can we get approval for meeting notes from October 11th? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Do we have any general public comments today? Okay. So, Eric, take their view for old business.
Before that, we've got nomination and election of GAB officers.
Okay, that's first thing. All right. Can we start with subcommittee? Does it matter?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So the
So
subcommittee,
you appoint the subcommittee.
but it's still I still have to make a motion, right? Or I still have to make a recommendation.
Our rules just say the chairman appoints the subcommittee.
In that, I'll just state what it is. Okay. Well then, Charlie's going to continue to lead the subcommittee, and the only change would be Taylor, who's now not on that, and Rita, very thankfully, she's taking this. Take this spot. All right. I think your agenda with the notes. Oh, where's that? Oh, there it is right there. No, I got it. I was looking at the wrong one. Sorry, man. Okay. Now, subcommittee is now established. Next, nomination election of GAB officers. Yes.
The municipalities changed it, right?
That's correct.
I rolled on.
That's correct. Jason Kronsberg, City of Charleston, rolls on for 2 years.
That's okay. Thank you for noting that. Everybody got that? Okay. So next is the nomination and election of GAB officers. Taylor was the vice chair. I would like to nominate Andrew to take his place as vice chair. Andrew's got a great career. Is that a motion? That is a motion. Second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Andrew, thank you. It's great. Next, did the subcommittee, I actually need to be elected if I'm, well, anybody else would like to do it, that's totally fair game too. So,
Make a motion to approve these as chair for the GAP committee.
Second.
thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you very much. I'm honored to do this, and I appreciate the support. Okay, now we move on to the Greenbelt program update.
All right, I'm going to give you an update on the stats you're going to see reflect changes since I believe the last time you received this was about a year ago, last February. And I'll roll right into it. So with the approval of 18 projects last cycle, our total projects jumped considerably up to 230 projects approved. And you can see the breakdowns below between conservation easements, fee simple, minor improvements, and we've started breaking out corridor projects now as well, feeling like those are really different types of projects from either conservation easements or fee simple, and then the rural and urban breakdown. Total acres protected, over 26,000. Again, your breakdown between various project types and urban and rural below. And funds awarded just under 167 million, with your breakdowns below that. Conservation easements are always going to be lower than fee simple because you're only buying a portion of the interest in a property. This is come at an average cost per acre of just under $6,000. Again, conservation easements are always more affordable than fee simple, and typically the urban area is more expensive than the rural area. So this has generated a match of almost 140%. Over 232 million. One thing I would point out on the corridors, you see a pretty big match there. Most of that's going to be actual design and construction of those multi-use path projects. And now we're looking at public access. Total acres from all projects approved. 45% of those projects currently have public access or have future planned public access, and 89% of funding, or just under 180 million, is tied to some sort of public access. Our minority lands funding is just under 60 million and just under 3,900 acres. And just a reminder, we define those as purchased by a settlement area organization, or if it's located in communities in Allendale, Hollywood, Lincolnville, North Charleston, Ravenel, if it's purchased specifically to serve a minority group, or if it's located in a predominantly minority neighborhood. So these are the projected remaining funds for the life of the first and second half penny. That's almost 85 million rural, 77.7 urban, and over 162 million total. With currently available is about 8.8 million for rural, 4.1 million for urban, and a total of 13 million. And as a reminder on that, that number will increase after July 1st when we start the new budget year. And lately we've been getting around 13 million total that's then split out between urban and rural. As you know, our urban allocations are further broken down into sub-allocations based on percentage of population of the municipalities within the urban growth boundary. You're going to see more negatives up there than you would typically see in the balance, and the reason for that was you'll recall the Red Top Park project last cycle. You all recommended that council take that equally from all allocations. Council did approve that, and that resulted in some allocations like James Island asked for all of their funding for a project that was approved last cycle as well. But then when you take their portion out for Red Top, that's what caused them to go back into the negative slightly. And all of these except for Urban Unincorporated and Folly Beach will be back in the positive after July 1st allocations. And these are the lifetime projected remaining funds for each of the urban sub allocations. Again, that totals over $77 million. This is our goals slide. We're going to get much deeper into this later in the program, but we have exceeded the overall goal and all of the sub goals except for rural lands, urban lands, and the corridors, which we now track by miles, which was a directive from County Council some years ago, and we finally converted over to that. Since April 2024, which I believe was the last time I gave you closing statistics, we've closed several projects. They're all listed there. With a whole lot more left to close than normal because of those 18 projects that were approved last cycle. And there's also still 10 of the Mount Pleasant Way multi-use path projects. And we're getting very close to them purchasing their first easements for a couple of those sections. And it's been a lot of work changing around grant agreements and kind of aligning everything to prepare for those and how we'll reimburse them and the documentation they'll need to provide. So just some notes on current and upcoming application cycles. Our FY25 winter cycle closed on January 24th. We do have site visits scheduled for Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. If you would like more detailed information on those, just email me after the meeting and I can send you the calendar invite. But you should have received an email last night with location, time, and project. We're going to have the first day, the Tuesday, will be down at Edisto and Johns Island, and then Wednesday we'll have a few projects east of the Cooper. And then we are anticipating our subcommittee meeting to be Wednesday, March 5th. That'll be the first review of the projects this cycle. And then full GAB on April 9th with the Finance Committee on April 24th and County Council on April 29th. And again, those are anticipated, not set in stone yet until the chairman puts those on the agenda. The FY26 summer application cycle will open on June 2nd and close on July 25th. Any questions on those stats? I know that's a pretty dry way of reporting our statistics, so later on I'm going to show you something new that we're doing to allow folks to dig a little deeper into our info. Move on to the next item. Okay. All right, so just a brief update. When you all make recommendations to County Council, I like to report back what happened. So again, all 18 projects from last cycle were approved by Council as recommended by the GAB, except for the main road project. It was approved with your condition, but they also added another condition that title to the subject property would transfer to the county should the applicant not provide proof of raising and investing $317,700 in matching funds within 6 years of approval. And we've met with the Little League. They're well aware of that, and they're going to be providing reports to us annually on their fundraising and expenses into developing the park until that's satisfied. And then, as recommended, the Greenbelt ordinance was amended to shift authority to waive the title insurance policy requirement from the GAB to staff.
Beezer. Quick question, Eric. Is the Little League, do they feel that that is obtainable, that number for the raising that within 6 years?
They do. Okay. They were a little nervous about it,
right?
And what would happen if they didn't raise it. But between in-kind donations, they've already gotten a lot of commitments for folks to donate work with heavy equipment, things like that. I told them to track all of that. So that's not necessarily cash that they have to raise, but they have to put that into the park. So they'll be collecting invoices on what something, like heavy equipment operation would normally cost someone, and that'll count towards their match.
Thanks.
Yes, sir. All right. If there's no other questions, we'll move in to analysis of Greenbelt goals. And kind of agenda for this section is I'll give you all a background of kind of how we got to here over the last year, give you some feedback from our partners, and then recommend some next steps, at least from a staff perspective. And if I could get through the whole of this through those next steps, then I think that would help you understand kind of where staff's recommending we go, and then open up the floor for discussion after that, if that works. So back almost a year ago, there was a motion approved directing staff to review the goals and make recommendations to the GAB on how to adjust them. And then we came back a couple months later, gave you some information on how the Greenbelt goals were initially created, compared historical population figures with projections, provided initial considerations after speaking with the National Forest, Francis Marion National Forest officials, BCD COG on our corridors progress, and county parks on our regional county parks goals. And we all encourage the GAB to think beyond just the historical goal structure, to really take a broad look at this and see how we can improve that. Someone suggested a goals subcommittee be formed, and Chair Moulton, Vice Chair Scarden, and Ms. Waite volunteered. We got a meeting together in June, and what we mostly discussed was how beneficial some mapping work could be, priority on corridors and connectivity between Greenbelt projects, and the opportunities for multi-county partnerships with Dorchester and Berkeley County having stood up their Greenbelt programs. Ultimately, we decided to wait and see what happened with the referendum, which, as you know, failed, and then we picked it back up after that. So I'll just go through real quick and remind everyone how we came up with our initial goals. The initial planning process compared Charleston County with peer counties and established that a goal of protecting 30% of lands in Charleston County was the overall goal. The consultant developed that recommendation because it would meet needs in 25 years, which would have been 2031. And it required protecting a minimum of an additional 40,000 acres at that time. We met that goal shortly after 2017. And these are slides from last April, just kind of regurgitating some of this. But within that overall goal, as you know, there are 6 sub-goals: rural, Francis Marion National Forest, low country wetlands, PRC regional parks, urban greenbelt lands, and greenway corridors. And you can see the percentage of that overall goal that each recommended acreage makes up. Just trying to piece things together from way back in 2005 and 2006 on how those sub-goals were created. There was just talk in the plan about rural goal being a minimum target. The National Forest goal was developed after consultation with staff from the National Forest. Wetlands, that talked about both the need for both urban and rural infill. PRC Parks was largely based on PRC's open space analysis, and they used the NRPA, National Recreation Parks Association recommendation at that time, which was 20 acres per 1,000 people. Then the urban area, there was just kind of a minimum target taking into account some of the municipal wish lists and what they felt their needs were, as well as the PRC open space analysis. And then corridors were based on the PRC open space analysis on a 200-mile system of 50-foot wide corridors. You've already seen this slide earlier in the presentation, but this is the breakdown where we currently stand. And this was It's good information, but I think even more astounding might be information released from the South Carolina Conservation Bank's Conservation Priority Mapping Report, which they put out annually. And their most recent is from 2024, which shows, if you look at Charleston County highlighted in yellow down at the bottom, it shows that of a total of 585,000 plus acres taking out water acres, so just the land mass, 585,000, that 49% of Charleston County is now protected. Only 17% of the county is considered developed land cover, which leaves about 34% of land mass remaining that's neither conserved nor developed. In my opinion, that gives us an excellent base of conservation and green space throughout the county, which can allow us to be a little more nuanced and targeted as we're looking at our new goals. So one thing we worked on shortly after the referendum was developing, initially we talked about a survey to send out to our partners, but we didn't really want to ask leading questions to try and pull them in any direction on goals. So we kept it very, very broad and said, based on your understanding of our goals, current goal status, land conservation and green space issues your organization is experiencing in the county, and all other factors, please provide feedback regarding how Charleston County might adjust its goals. The question is intended to be open-ended to avoid influencing responses or limiting ideas. And that really gave us a ton of feedback back. Some of it related to goals, a lot of it not related to goals, related to allocations, allowable uses, things that would require changing the program more broadly, even ordinances, and some may have not even been allowed through state law that establishes transportation sales tax. You all did receive the full responses that we received back from our partners. So we emailed every organization the partner feedback form that we had awarded Greenbelt projects to in the past, and went through those open-ended answers. And this slide is kind of a high-level view of common goals-related themes. So all of these things came up in responses from more than one respondent. First of those being resilience or resilient lands. Those are kind of defined as large connected areas of land that can adapt to and mitigate climate change. They can support healthy ecosystems, biodiversity, clean air and water, while also sometimes providing opportunities for recreation. And they can help protect communities from flooding and storms. That was probably one of the most common themes that we heard back, especially from our land trust community. The next was the importance of continuing work to connect these green spaces through our corridors, not necessarily just all multi-use paths, but interconnectivity between sites, whether those be streams, larger landscape scale projects, but connecting all of our Greenbelt sites. Threatened and disenfranchised communities. We do address this to some degree with our small landowner program, but the general consensus was that there could be more focus on this and it could be incorporated into our goals. I'm also mentioning too, where you see the little stars, that's where we had this was mentioned by both kind of your nonprofit land trust community and the municipalities that responded. Other one would be working lands, specifically farms and timberland. What I learned from one of the responses, and I've heard this other places, that our timber production in the state is really being threatened by larger market forces, and we're starting to potentially lose a lot of our timberland. So working lands could be a focus for goals. Having more parks was a common refrain, public access to Greenbelt sites. but not just CCPRC parks and not just in the urban areas, that there are rural areas that need public access to green spaces as well. Other comments focused on buffering existing green spaces and parks, specifically talking about our larger, more iconic properties like National Forest, the Wildlife Refuge, some of our Ace Basin areas, Dungannon, Caw, places like that. I would assume that would typically be done through private conservation easement, but it could also be through direct holdings by the Forest Service or the DNR or Fish and Wildlife Service. Providing water access was a common theme, both for just being able to walk along and view the water, to fish from the bank, as well as PRC feels that there is a need for additional boat ramps to accommodate folks that want to launch their boat in local waters. Multi-jurisdictional coordination was a common theme. Utilizing GIS mapping and available data sets to try and help set some of these goals or change our goals, analyze our goals. And under that theme, South Carolina Conservation Bank mapping was referenced several times. I'm going to pull a slide up on that in just a minute. The land trusts also all volunteered to be a part of a goals technical advisory committee. I think that would be very helpful early on if we go down the route of mapping and developing a geodatabase. Some other themes that were not necessarily consensus across the board was kind of a build on existing goals approach to more new approaches that might include consolidating goals or relabeling or some totally new way to look at goals altogether. We had one respondent note that it would be good if corridors could include scenic byways and view sheds, and noted that when people are driving through Charleston County, like down Highway 174, what a great impression that leaves whenever you're seeing nature and not just development everywhere. The Trust for Public Lands Park Serve app was mentioned in study. This is also called the 10-minute walk analysis. This is a great way to help determine areas of need for public access in underserved areas, and I'm going to show you a little bit more on that. Then another note is that Charleston County Parks and Rec Commission does plan this year to undertake an open space analysis and planning effort. Their more recent plans, since that old open space analysis back, early 2000s, haven't really been as much of an analysis as kind of, I don't know how to describe it, Matt. It's opportunistic. Yeah.
Thanks to the county and the
You
county.
want to grab the mic real quick? This is Matt Moldenauer, Charleston County Parks and Rec Commission.
Good morning. So we haven't done a sophisticated open space analysis since the early 2000s. We've done comprehensive plans, in fact, 2 comprehensive plans since then. But what those have helped us identify are gaps in service, largely, but they haven't helped us understand exactly how much additional land we would need. So when we brought those projects before this board a few months ago, or whenever that was, we knew that, for example, one of those was Johns Island. One of those was Ravenel. We know that both of those are relatively unprotected areas that need protected parkland. That's why we bought those properties before this board. So what our plan is this year to, similar to how you're describing, we'll have our own GIS analysis that helps understand, based on the current standards from NRPA, what the demand would truly be based on the current and expected population. So and I'm sure you've seen the population growth projections for the area. They say there's a lot of growth in West County especially. So that has informed and will inform a lot of our decision making. Same for boat landings too, of course.
Yeah. So, and that'll be going on roughly, maybe wrap that by the end of the year?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so while I certainly agree with a lot of the common themes on the feedback that we've gotten, the one I'm most excited about and would really like to pursue next is taking advantage of the substantial increases in mapping technologies and other research and relevant plans that have been compiled since we first adopted our goals in 2006. So an example of this, what you're looking at over on the right-hand side there, is the State Conservation Bank's Conservation Priority Model. And those dark red areas that you see on the map of South Carolina are their highest conservation priority geographic areas. The lighter orange is their medium areas, and everything in green is existing protected land. And the way they develop this, and they do it annually now, as directed by the state legislature, they base it on 6 submaps, which are the priorities for the State Conservation Bank program that's set by the legislature. And those are conservation corridors, ecological conservation, sustainable forestry, sustainable agriculture, water resources, and public trails and vistas. So I'm not an expert on GIS, but we do have a lot of experts we can work with. And I'm probably not explaining this correctly, but they essentially have 6 submaps, and they overlay all of those. And where those really overlap, those become the highest priority areas. So if you've got all 6 maps covering one area, that's going to be a high conservation priority area. So I think this is something that we could pursue. I know this is something that we could pursue for Charleston County and do it on a Charleston County scale. And we'll get to more of that in just a minute. And then another example of new plans and new data sets is the Trust for Public Lands Park Serve or 10-minute walk analysis. That's there's a link to that right there, and I'll send that out to the group as well, so you don't have to write it down. But Trust for Public Land has mapped every green space in the urban areas of the United States. And that shows Charleston right there. This is just a screen grab of some of the information you can get. So what's in green are existing green spaces, and those dark purple areas are the most underserved areas. Those are areas that are well over a 10-minute walk to a green space. And as the colors get lighter, then those are served a little bit better, but they're not within the light green area that's all within a 10-minute walk to a public green space. So you can see City of Charleston, 49% of residents live within a 10-minute walk of a park. You can do this again for every urban area. City of North Charleston, that goes down to 33%, Mount Pleasant, 15%, Ravenel, 5%. So there's just some examples there. But it's a great way for us to be able to look at and analyze areas that are underserved as far as public green spaces go. It could be particularly useful, I think, in the urban areas if we're looking at potentially changing up some goals as far as urban areas go. And in the rural areas, I think it could be helpful too. Obviously, most of the rural areas are going to be outside of a 10-minute walk to green space. But I know Berkeley County, when they developed their plan, they worked with the Trust for Public Land and did some more custom modeling and made it a 10-minute drive to green space. And they didn't necessarily set their goals based on that, but they do use that in their analysis as projects are coming through. And there's all kinds of other data sets, so we could bring this all into our own geodatabase, just like the State Conservation Bank has, where we can turn these different data sets on and off, see where there's areas where they converge, and bring that information back to you to help maybe guide this goals exercise. But some of those other data plans are listed on the screen. I won't read each one of them, but I know there's more than that as well. And as mentioned, the part of the feedback was to form a technical advisory committee that could at least initially assist with this mapping process and then perhaps help with analyzing the results of that and bringing back some information to you all. So my recommendation for next steps would be to give us a directive to pursue the mapping geodatabase analysis with the Technical Advisory Committee, which I'm thinking at this point we would at least start it out fairly informally. That might be virtual meetings with those that want to participate, and we'd extend that opportunity not just to our land trust, but to our major municipalities as well. And at the same time, PRC is working on their open space analysis. When we can incorporate that data into our geodatabase and modeling, then we could bring back that to you all, which you could then use that to make recommendations to county council on whatever goal changes you think you might want to see happen. And then if county council approves those, then I think after that would be the time to address some of the broader changes that would require ordinance changes or kind of wholesale program changes once we have a set of goals to support those actions. That was a lot of talking for me, so I'm gonna stop now. Turn it back over. Happy to answer any questions, and I know we've got members of the land trust community here as well today that could answer some questions about their feedback also.
Can I just make a couple comments about this? In talking to you about it, I heard repeatedly that the goals would pertain to the mapping in the sense that it's like really trying to target the most critical areas and the connectivity of those areas. And I just kind of want to restate that just to make sure everybody heard that. And now that I believe the staff recommendation that comes a very nuanced, very targeted approach to those goals, and that this whole thing could take as long as a year. Is that about right?
I think so. Definitely if we're going to wait on PRC to come back with their open space analysis, which is how we help set some of our initial goals. So I think we should probably wait on that. But simultaneously, we could work with our technical advisory committee to gather all this data and start doing some analysis with some more specific recommendations to come back to you all in the fall, or depending on how timing goes.
With that in mind, it's totally business as usual for 12 to 24 months, right? I mean, this is all just so everybody hears the time frame of everything involved. That this is all based on how we build the future program.
Yeah, and we'll provide updates as we're able to. So if we have our at least initial mapping done prior to PRC being able to include their information, we can provide you updates on that, and you can give us direction on where you want to go. But I don't think we won't have a clear idea of what you all want to recommend for goal changes until later this year, closer to the end of the year.
So any questions so far? Yeah, Andrew.
Just maybe a statement or an idea that if and when we do update goals, I think it might be interesting to think about how we communicate those to, potential and future applicants. So it's not just us evaluating projects upon those new goals, but also, kind of letting people know what we're looking for. I think that might be interesting and kind of help maybe unlock areas that, or ideas for people to come, or applicants to come in and give us, projects to look at. So it just might be something to think about. Like how do we roll that out to our partners to let them know that, hey, we've updated the goals, we're looking for, we're targeting these areas. Not to say that we won't look at anything that comes in front of us, but I think that would be a good idea.
I agree with that. It does seem like some kind of public outreach would be, whether it's a press release celebrating that awesome stat of 49%, and then, by the way, here's where it's going in the future, or, there's a lot to talk about there.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Jones.
I must say, this is all very interesting. I'm out of my depth, I have to confess, so I have to rely on other people. But when you talk about the database, whatever, is it going to be expensive? Can we do it in-house? Existing staff?
That's a great question, Mr. Jones. Yes, we've spoken with our GIS department already. They're actually very excited about the opportunity to work on something like this because they said, a lot of times we're mapping stormwater infrastructure or, stuff that they're not as interested in. So they're fully on board to help us put this together. There are organizations like the Nature Conservancy, Low Country Land Trust that have robust GIS staff, and they've already offered to assist with this. And we also requested money for our budget that'll start July 1st if we need to pay for some additional, like the Trust for Public Land. If we need to pay for more of a custom Charleston County 10-minute drive time, we have money in the budget for that next year.
So the answer is we're going to be helped by our friends, but we should be able to get other money from the county or the sales tax, which will be modest.
I think I budgeted $10,000 for GIS work next year. If needed, we may not need it. You're welcome.
Okay, very good. Let's move on to the next item, agenda item.
So could we just get maybe just a motion to accept staff recommendation for moving forward with these steps?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So moved.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Great.
Thank you.
That's really good.
All right. Next item on the agenda is an introduction of our new Greenbelt public dashboard. So the presentation I gave you right at the beginning with the program update, typically we create PDF out of those slides, put it on our website, and that becomes our program report for that period. Overall, the county has been working harder and harder on more public transparency and getting information out to the public in an easier manner. So we started about 2 years ago, really a 4-phase upgrade effort that started with our online application. And that was a direct result from surveys that went out to all of our partners during our last 5-year review that were focused on Greenbelt processes. And they said you could make your online application easier. It was also upgraded for more streamlined process for staff evaluating applications and storing those. That's been completed. So we started that about 2 years ago. That's been completed. We also needed a new project database with reporting functionality. And the reason for that is because we were still using Microsoft Access as our database. And then when we created reports, we would run queries in Access, have to manually enter information into various spreadsheets that would run calculations to give us all of our reporting, which, as you can see, that there's a lot of opportunity for mistakes in that, and it's very time consuming. So the project database with reporting, IT has built us a new database, and we're already using that now. Third step in that is the public dashboard, which is through a software called Power BI. The county already uses that and a few other departments to get information out to the public. And it just went live today. Before I show you that, I just want to recognize Kylie Jeffords. She took the lead on all of this. And let me tell you, we'd still be on project database if Kylie hadn't been pushing this forward, because I don't understand all this stuff. Kylie comes from the IT world and was a great asset. So thank you. So let me. Oh, there it was. Okay. Okay, so this is just the county Greenbelt webpage. And from our landing page, if you go right down here, it says Projects Dashboard. Click on that. And you get all these nice charts. And it has all the information that I gave you earlier in the presentation. And you can change between charts and table format. You can manipulate the data. If you only want to see total projects or everything on this screen just that are fee simple, you click on fee simple. It's going to say there's 146, and it changes all the other information. You can reset it here. It's got information about funds awarded, total protected acres with all those breakdowns of the different project types, match information. You can also get details on every project that's been approved through the Greenbelt program. This is a list right down here. If it is, if it's a park that's currently open to the public, you can click on it. It's going to take you to our project page for that park on the website. Give you some basic information. This is Pinckney Park on James Island. Gives you amenities, as well as links to actually contact the owner and operator of that park. It's got the public access information that I presented earlier, along with every park that has current or future public access based on their applications. Data on our minority lands, how many have closed, where they're located. You can sort all of this by council district, by city, by funding allocation source. Same for our small landowner program. And we have a frequently asked questions page with some definitions to help someone that's new to Greenbelt know what a fee simple acquisition is compared to a conservation easement. That's really it, but we'll send the link out to that along with the other links that I mentioned today and encourage you to dig into that. I do want to note we just went live with this today and we've already found a few small bugs in it, so we're going to continue to work through some of those over the coming weeks. But we're really excited about it. We will be getting some information out to the public to let them know of the good work that we've done to get them this information. So you can expect probably a press release and some stuff in our newsletter about that in the coming weeks.
Well, I hope you really celebrate it and call out the 49% and achieving the goal by 2017 and the kite is that awesome dashboard. I mean, it feels like kind of a milestone day.
Thank you.
We made it to.
All right. If there's no more questions on the public dashboard, I will turn it over to David Ray, Chief Conservation Officer for Low Country Land Trust. You all requested some updates at our GAB meetings from partner organizations, and David's going to provide that. All right. So you're up there.
Okay. Thank you, Harry.
Yep.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you this morning. I hope I have fulfilled the assignment appropriately. I wanted to give you a little bit of a history of the projects that Low Country Land Trust has done over the years through the Greenbelt program, and then touch on just a few of our projects as examples of what we're currently doing on the land that we protected through the Greenbelt program, and talk a little bit about why the different types of projects that we're able to do through the work that you all do are important to the picture of conservation in Charleston County. So I'll leave a little bit of time at the end for questions and comments, and to the extent that I don't hit on anything that you may be interested in, please speak up, let me know whether it's in this meeting or outside of the meeting. Very happy to talk with you further about our work. So a little bit about Low Country Land Trust before we dive in. We were founded in 1986 right here in Charleston County. And over the years, we protected over 163,000 acres. And that's not just in Charleston County. We've actually done that in 14 different counties within the coastal plain of South Carolina. We basically say we work from the North Carolina border to the Georgia border. But we are headquartered here in Charleston and have done an awful lot of work in Charleston County. Our mission, as you can see, is to protect land and water forever, nurture relationships between people and place, and connect conservation to community. We do have some core values that we've stated for ourselves and for the public, and those, just to sum them up very quickly, are that we are trustworthy, we are intentional about the work we do, We try to be innovative as much as we can. We're very collaborative, as are all the land trusts in the low country of South Carolina. We try to be as nimble as we can, and we try to be very connected to the local communities in which we work. We have a staff of 19 people. I say 19 plus because we also have some contractors who are pretty much like staff members who help us get our work done. And the legacy item here is just to note that a few years ago, the East Cooper Land Trust folded into Low Country Land Trust, and its predecessor was the Mount Pleasant Conservancy, both of which did Greenbelt projects prior to that merger. And so we are trying to carry on the legacy, both by looking after the lands that were protected during those times and also continuing to fulfill the mission that East Cooper Land Trust had prior to that time. So here's a map, and I know, Charleston County is kind of a long, skinny county, so it's a little hard to see every project here, but on that map, the Greenbelt funded projects are represented in pink. I'm going to show you two other maps that take in the northern part of the county and the southern part, so you'll get a little bit closer up view of those, but that's the sum of the Greenbelt projects that Low Country Land Trust, and I am including East Cooper Land Trust in this, has done over the period of the Greenbelt program. So it's 50 projects from 2007 to 2024. 7 of those were ECLT Mount Pleasant Conservancy projects. Total acreage is just over 7,900 acres. Almost 2,000 acres of that were wetlands, which is one of the goals of the program, as you know. The total Greenbelt funds going into those projects was $35.3 million, and the total match that we brought to those projects was $71.2 million. So that's just over $2 outside the Greenbelt program for every dollar that the Greenbelt program put into the projects. I also have noted here 3 partner projects. These were projects that were brought to the Greenbelt program by other organizations that Low Country Land Trust ended up holding the conservation easement on. And there's one actually that I didn't mention here, which is still in the works. We're partnering with Charleston County Park and Recreation Commission on the Simmons Creek property, and we will end up holding a conservation easement on that one and a neighboring property as well. So here is the close-up of the northern part of Charleston County. You can see at the top there is one of our more recent ones, the Fairfield Plantation 2 conservation easement. Actually, you can see the 2 of them in pink at the top of the map, right at the Santee River. And the one at the bottom is Boone Hall, which was done in 2019. We overall, and these statistics relate to the entire county, we've done 41 rural projects, and that has consisted of 4,674 upland acres. We've done 9 urban projects, and that's consisted of 760 upland acres, and then, as I mentioned before, about 1,925 wetland acres total. This is the map showing the southern part of the county, and you can see it taking in a lot of Johns Island, Wabalaw Island, Edisto Island, and the Ravenel Megget area, as well as one project from 2009 right up there on the Dorchester County line at the top of the map. 16 of the projects that I've mentioned to you throughout the county are fee simple projects, 34 conservation easements, 25 of the projects have involved farmland, and 19 of the projects have involved public access. So what I'm going to do now is show you 4 time periods, 4 5-year time periods. And this one goes back to the period of 2005 to 2010. During that time, Low Country Land Trust and its other affiliated organizations did 22 projects. 21 of those were rural, 1 was urban. 21 of them were conservation easements, and 1 was a fee simple project. And just to give you some examples, the easement on the Center for Birds of Prey was done during that time period. Casina Point conservation easement on Edisto Island, Bryan's Dairy and Ravens Point on Johns Island, Bugby Plantation on Wabmalaw Island, and the Phillips Community Park were done during that time period. And so I guess I didn't fully explain the legend on this map, but it may be obvious to you. The green are protected lands, or public protected lands. The orange are lands that are protected by private organizations, and the pink are Greenbelt protected properties during this time period. And so as I move from 2005 to 10 to the 2010 to 15 period, the ones that were protected in the prior period go a little bit darker pink, and the brighter pink are the ones from that time period. During this time period, there were 10 projects. 6 were rural, 4 were urban, 5 were fee simple, and 5 were conservation easements. And this is the time period during which the 2 Angel Oak projects happened, a fee simple project. And as you all may know, we've got a huge project going on now, working with a world-class landscape architect, Thomas Waltz, to really do a lot to improve the experience of visiting the Angel Oak. Thornhill Farm, which is up near McClellanville, was done during this time period. The Cage property, working with settlement communities in the Mount Pleasant area. Magnolia Community Garden, which is in West Ashley, which is very actively used by community members for having their own produce growing there. Fairfield Plantation 1 up on the Santee River was done during this time period, and I'll come back to that a little bit later. And the Hills Gowan Conservation Easement, which is right in the Angel Oak area as well, was done during this time period. So one of the reasons I point out Fairfield and point out Hills Gowan is because one of the things we find is when we do projects, particularly in a certain geography, it can tend to stimulate other conservation opportunities in those same areas. So as the Angel Oak was taking shape, we were getting the opportunity to also protect some private land that would remain private, but that would preserve the experience around the Angel Oak. Fairfield Plantation, done back in, I think it was 2013. It's taken over 10 years, but we've now protected most of the rest of that property just this past year through grants that you all recommended. Going to 2015 to 2020, a little bit more lean period. There were 2 projects that happened then. Both of them, interestingly, were urban projects inside the urban growth boundary. Both of them were conservation easements. One of them was the Boone Hall Conservation Easement. And so that was, as I learned, this was during the time that I was coming on board with Low Country Land Trust, had been a major goal of the Greenbelt program for, and actually for many in the county going back 25 years or more to protect that property. So though we had a fewer projects this time, we had one that had been anticipated for a very long time. And I would say I've had the pleasure of getting to monitor that easement since we put it under protection, and the Greenbelt program staff have come on several of those occasions. And as I always say, every time I drive in the alley of oaks, I think this is a good day because I'm at Boone Hall. And I think just everyone in the county being able to breathe easy knowing that Boone Hall is protected forever is just a huge win, and just psychic benefit, and a lot of fun, a lot of beauty, a lot of culture is preserved there. So we're very proud of that project and very grateful to the Greenbelt program for making it happen.
You got to do it before Willie passed, which was great.
You're absolutely right. For him to get to see it protected and for everybody to get to honor Willie, and actually twice, because after the celebration, the governor then awarded him the Order of the Palmetto as well. And as Willie said, it's a magical, mystical place, and it truly is. So that was just one of the most wonderful, I think, experiences I've had in conservation here. So 2020 to 2024, during this time period, we've had 15 projects, 11 rural, 4 urban, 9 of them were fee simple projects, and 6 conservation easements. And some of the examples here, you can see Grayson Oaks Farm, which we just closed on in December, the Beefield Community Park on James Island, Deerhead Oak Park in McClellanville, the Rutledge Tomb site in the Phillips community, Sea Island Small Farmers Cooperative in Ravenel, which is now owned by the Park and Recreation Commission and will be a great natural and cultural and historical park. The Oakville Burden Creek Conservation Easement on Johns Island, which was a partnership with the Aviation Authority, a very unusual project in that sense, but it protected a very threatened piece of land that probably would have contributed to a lot of funding had the property been developed. Silver Hill Conservation Easement in McClellanville, and then the Fairfield Plantation Conservation Easement that I mentioned, coming around a decade later after working with the family earlier to protect that land. So in terms of, I thought about what does it mean to update you on projects, and hopefully I'm giving you a good update. One of the things I just want to mention is that we do these land protection projects and we get the legal documents filed during a certain year. And then the real land protection starts, which is in perpetuity protection every single year, visiting these properties, making sure that the terms of either the grant agreement from Greenbelt or the conservation easement that's on the property are abided by in perpetuity. And so we have to think about perpetuity. What does that mean? How are we going to do that? One of the ways that we try to provide faith to the community that we're going to be able to do that is that we are nationally accredited by the Land Trust Accreditation Commission. We have been renewed twice in our accreditation. We will be up for accreditation again in 2029. And that's a national body that does this for land trusts all over the country and makes sure that we adhere to standards that are professional and that will ensure that these protections do last in perpetuity. We actually have 3 dedicated stewardship staff on our staff, and we have other staff. You can see our conservation staff in that picture. Other staff that also contribute to the stewardship work that we do. We have actually 552 property interests that we have to monitor this year. And that's growing because every year that we do more projects, we have more that we have to monitor. So it's a big focus for us to make sure that we do it and that we do it right. And in order to do that and to cover ground with that, we are getting innovative in terms of how we do it. We have aerial and satellite monitoring that we do. We actually have a great pilot who volunteers a lot of his services to fly over some of our properties and monitor them. And then we are actually using a technology called Lens to do satellite monitoring of some of our properties as well. We still go out to the properties every so many years and get on the ground and communicate with the landowners every year. But these are ways that we can cover the ground that we need to. And then we have a stewardship and legal defense fund, which helps, doesn't cover all the costs, but it helps to pay by the money that comes in interest every year to cover some of our costs in fulfilling that stewardship obligation. And we try to take in funding with each project that we do to put into that pot so that we won't erode that fund over time. So just a little bit about some of our current projects and programs. When East Cooper Land Trust folded into Low Country Land Trust, we formally created what we call a community lands program. That's really oriented towards projects that aren't necessarily the largest projects, but they're projects that are very important to various types of communities around Charleston County. So one example is rural towns like the town of McClellanville. And this is a project I'm highlighting here that you all recommended and was approved for grant funding last year. It's the Carolina Seafoods property along Highway 17 at the gateway of McClellanville. And you can see on the map on the upper left, that's actually the green space plan for the town of McClellanville. And the property that we are protecting much of through this project is highlighted there as a gateway to McClellanville, an important green space that they want preserved. So we're cooperating with them. It's got a lot of open areas, a lot of beautiful live oaks. It's got a sort of a pine savanna, and it's part of the view as you enter the town of McClellanville. This is also a project that's multi-phase that relates to us trying to work with the town to preserve their working waterfront. One of the unique things about McClellanville is that they are an active seafood producing town. And we want to help them continue that. It's not getting down to the very nitty gritty of that is not necessarily a Greenbelt program task, but we feel that we can do a lot of things in tandem that will help preserve the working waterfront of McClellanville. And so we're going to continue trying to preserve the culture and the scenery and the nature of McClellanville. Beefield Community Park. This one thing we try to do when we work with settlement communities in particular, but all communities really, is to be community driven. And the Battery Island Drive Neighborhood Association is the nonprofit that represents the Beefield community, which has been around since just after the Civil War. And you can see some members there next to the property that the Greenbelt program funded, which is going to be Beefield Community Park. And you can see on the lower right there is Sam Sewell, who's our Community Lands Program Director. He's done a lot of work with that community. And the thing that I really want to note that we're trying to do differently and not be as completely just transactional. I mean, we are a transactional organization. That's our biggest expertise, is doing real estate transactions of various sorts. But we want to go beyond the transactional and be relational, particularly when we're talking about communities and what's important to them. And so in the case of Beefield, we were able to purchase the property. We're still owning it for a period of time until we can hand it off to the community, but we didn't want to just leave it at that. We know that these are regular citizens who are trying to do a lot of great work in their community. They're not necessarily specialists on how you create a park, that kind of thing. And so we were able to work with them, and they secured a grant from the Conservation Alliance. It's called the Confluence Program, which is aimed at communities like this. We were able to work with them to secure that grant, which then was able to go into a park planning process. And it was great because we were able to together hire biohabitats to have community visioning sessions and to create a concept for the park that you see here. The other thing was with that money going into this small community organization, we connected them with the South Carolina Association for Community Economic Development, which was willing to provide sort of accounting and fiscal services to them. And so they have a partnership now that enables them to be able to utilize this kind of funding. And so a big part of what we're trying to do is not just do the transaction and then move on to the next, but to stay with the communities and help them in any way that we can to get done what they envision. Thornhill Farm and Grayson Oak. So now in 2014, Greenbelt was responsible for one farm coming into what is now our organization, Thornhill Farm up near McClellanville. And just recently in December, through the generosity of the Greenbelt program and the South Carolina Conservation Bank, we were able to purchase the Grayson Oaks on Johns Island. They're both about the same size, about 94 acres. We've learned some things at Thornhill Farm that we are looking forward to applying at Grayson Oaks. So you can see at the top there is Chucktown Acres is our tenant at Thornhill Farm, and it's an active farm, meat-producing farm, also hosting kids' field trips out to the property. So a lot of people get to see farms who otherwise might not be able to get up close and see how farming is done and how it's done well in a regenerative fashion. We're looking forward to doing the same on Grayson Oaks, and that is in the works. And you see here a photo from the celebration that we just had maybe about a week and a half ago. Thank you, Greenbelt staff, for coming out. And we'd love to host you all as much as you're interested to come out and visit these properties as well. So please just reach out if you are interested. Last thing, land-wise, I just wanted to point out, coming back to the Fairfield Plantation 2 project. So in isolation, this project was important for a number of reasons, but part of it, as you can see in the aerial photo map, is that it's on both sides, either side of Highway 17 as it enters Charleston County from the north. So this is the gateway to Charleston County going across the Santee River, and then it's part of Highway 17 as you go further down. You can see some of the photos from our baseline document about what it looks like where the highway fronts the property and where the property fronts the Santee River. So this property is protecting those things right there in the immediate vicinity. But I wanted to point out how conservation easements that remain private lands are an important part of the big conservation picture that includes public lands. And so this next map shows the context of those projects. The gray polygon that you see there is Fairfield 2, and the one that's attached to it to the south of it is Fairfield 1. And you can see that those projects connect into a huge area of public lands. This includes the Francis Marion National Forest. And in fact, if you look at the map on the right, once you go out of Fairfield 1 and go south, you go through Francis Marion National Forest and connect to Thornhill Farm. That's the other red project at the bottom there. But those connect into the Santee Coastal Reserve, into the Cape Romaine National Wildlife Refuge. And this is an area of exceeding 300,000 acres of contiguous protected land. And so when we do these private lands conservation projects, what we're trying to do is build on that protected landscape using the tools that are available to continue to do that. And they really fit together as a whole to create the protected landscape and they give meaning to a number like 49%. The configuration of it is important as well. So we want to try to do work in places like this. I won't dwell on this because Eric talked quite a bit about the program recommendations. We just had a little bit of time to make the recommendations that we did, and we wrote a letter that I understand you all have. And I just want to say that we are very ready, as Eric mentioned, to participate in helping from a technical standpoint or any other community relations standpoint in helping you to establish and explain the goals for the program going forward. We very much want to be a part of that. And I think I can speak for all of the organizations in the land trust community and the conservation community to say that we're very interested in working with you to do that. So with that, if you have any questions or comments, if there's time. If not, I'm happy to talk with you offline as well.
Good work, David. Mr. Jones.
I think that was excellent. Very impressive. My questions are very general. Roughly, what percentage of your projects would come from or be financed by the Greenbelt, our Greenbelt program?
That's a good question.
Just roughly, I know
yeah.
whether it's acreage or whatever, just an indication.
I'd say probably it's somewhere between 25 and 50, but it may be around like 33 to 40, okay. Somewhere in there.
Are you the biggest in South Carolina in the conservation business of land trust, land and?
Big can be defined in many ways. So I will say we are among the larger organizations, and in terms of the acreage that we have protected, yes.
Okay, and this is just general interest for me. I mean, I see advertisements for non-profits raising money, particularly pets and whatever. Mm-hmm. I never see anything from you folk. Huh. Could you talk of your funding? Because, I mean, it's impressive, and I think you're deserving of more funding for what you do.
I need to get you on the list because you'd be bombarded perhaps if you were on it. Well, we have a lot of community support. We have many donors, just private individuals and small foundations, et cetera, that provide annual operating funding for us. For our project work, it's quite varied as well. The Conservation Bank, along with the Greenbelt program, but we're also we've gotten some grants in Dorchester County now, and looking forward to working with some of the other counties that have funding. We've gotten some federal funding we've gotten some state funding, particularly for projects like the Angel Oak, the actual park project, and a number of foundations. The Donnelly Foundation is very supportive of the land trust community as well. So it's pretty varied. We've got a pretty robust communications team. If you go on our website and you'd like to receive updates from us, there's a place where you can click and put in your information, and I think you'll hear basically weekly about different stories about what we're doing to keep you informed.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Well, David, thank you very much. That was a great synopsis of
You're welcome.
the past few years.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Thanks, David. Eric, do you have anything else today?
Just so there's no confusion, I wanted to put this up one more time because there's a typo on the agenda. Upcoming meeting, subcommittee, March 5th. That's at 9 o'clock a.m. And then full gab, April 9th at 10 o'clock a.m. That's it.
Very good. Does anybody have any more comments or questions, thoughts? Okay, very good. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
My guess is we'll end up using a lot of the same data.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can track our